Oh, hello. Hey, world. All right, could somebody give me a quick thumbs up if if you guys could hear me? These are always like super weird. Alrighty, so I wanted this to be kind of a definitely a simple stream, right? I just wanted us to hang out, answer some questions, and just be with people. Because I feel like this little community thing that we have here, I think it's good. I think it's cool. And I love this. I love this space. Right. So let's go ahead and let's answer some questions. I've been seeing them kind of rolling slowly. I know I didn't give a lot of notice on this live. I didn't even think I was gonna go live. But I was gonna try to put out a video today, but that ended up not really working out the way that I thought it would. But you know what? We're here, and I think it's good. So, cheers to everyone. Hope everyone's having a great day so far. And where are you guys watching from? Out of curiosity. Also, this is like my favorite thing ever. Seeing Christopher say this live. No way. I am so hyped. That made me so happy, especially because I literally just, set up the live and I'm like, okay, I'll do it in like 15 minutes. And then he was like one of the first people here, right? He was the first person here. And he said, live, no way. I don't know. That excitement. I loved it. Nowhere man said, have I ever farted and felt lumps in my pants? That's gonna be a no. But interesting question, right? Christopher with a great RFK question. So what do you believe will be the turning point for RFK Jr. to finally be seen as a viable candidate to vote for within the national conversation? Great, great, great question. Awesome. Hey, you're from Mass, Illinois. So cool. Cheers. I love it. So it's definitely a loaded question, right? I think right now, getting him on every state, right? Like, I think when that's done, I think he'll be taken a little bit more seriously because right now, the easy jab is like, "Oh, you're wasting your vote. Like, you can't even vote for him." Right? Like, he's finally in my state. I'm excited about that. He's in other states that I care deeply about. That's awesome, right? Pretty soon he's gonna be in the largest electoral college state, which is California, because they're gonna start actually validating all of his signatures in August. So that's going to be really interesting. But I think a lot of things have to do with this, right? Like in RFK's press conference on Sunday. And was it Sunday? I'm not sure. But they were like, "What affects your campaign?" And he was like, "Everything affects my campaign." Oh, because one of the people from the Associated Press asked him, "How does Biden stepping down affect your campaign?" And or if it does affect your campaign, and he said, "Everything affects my campaign." Right? And I'm thinking about, what happened to President Trump, right? And how that, possibly drastically affected his campaign. And I think these are all valuable questions to be asking, right? Because also today or actually yesterday on Piers Morgan, he said, "Oh man, should I try to bring this up? Should I try to bring this up? Should I share my screen?" All right, I wasn't really gonna share my screen. Should I share my screen? All right. I don't know. I don't know if I should. Let me try it. You guys are all gonna be doing this with me. I will bring this up super, super fast. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Perfect. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. That's not it. Which one is it? All right, I think this one's it. All right, so he goes ahead and he's asking him about. I'm not sure if I could find it.
not make it easier for Kamala Harris or whoever the nominee ends up being for the Democrats? But it not make their job easier if they were able, in her case, I mean, uniquely, because but she'd be doing what it applied to, if she was able to become president, would that not strengthen her position and improve her chances of winning?
It will definitely strengthen her position within the party.
That's
I'm not
yeah.
sure that that's the best thing for the Democratic Party. I would think that the best thing for the party is to actually have a democratic process that where people are either using ranked choice voting, which actually is democratic, or using polls, national polls, where you say who's the most likely Democrat to beat Donald Trump, and actually really opening up the convention to a vote. I think what they're going to do is they're going to have kind of a Potemkin village of democracy. They're going to have a kind of a faux democracy where they pretend it's a democratic process, but Kamala is at the end of every, at the end of every pathway. So I think it's really going to be about picking her vice president. That there's going to probably be a little bit of democracy there. But as you know, Piers, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I had to get out of the party because they would not have a democratic process.
Mm,
They use, the DNC, which is the elite 400 elite members of the Democratic Party, decided who was going to be president, which is President Biden, and they rigged the rules to make sure that there was no democracy. And I grew up in a Democratic Party that was fighting to make sure every American got the right to vote for anybody that they wanted to vote for. And today's Democratic Party is just the opposite. It's fighting and spending hundreds of millions of dollars.
yeah, you know what else is interesting? A lot of people like the argument with Kamala being, like the nominee because she was on the primary as, Joe Biden's running mate. But that's not exactly true, right? Because on the ballots in from state to state, Kamala wasn't on every ballot, right? Like Kamala's name wasn't on the ballot in Maryland, right? On the ballot in Maryland during the primaries, it was just Joe Biden's name. So this idea of like, oh, we got to protect our democracy, right? It's like we got to trust this democratic process. Well, that's kind of not so relevant right now because they're almost ignoring that process. Now, if you're in a state where Kamala's name was on the ballot as vice president, then I guess you have an argument there. To me, it still seems a bit naughty because I think people, for the most part, were voting for Biden. Right? I don't know how many times you go to the ballot box and you're like, all right, I'm really hoping for this vice president pick. Like it's so secondary, right? So, and I do think there's a reason why, President Obama suggested to do in an open primary, right? Like let's do this again, right? Let's actually have a fleet of candidates and let's choose from them, right? So there's a lot of sketchy things happening right now between how Kamala is being lifted up. And you know what I was thinking too? One of the comments here is just incredibly great. I believe it's the top comment here. Look at this. Just remember, the same people who told you Joe is sharp as ever and he's mentally fit are the same people who are going to tell you Kamala is great. There's a lot of weird things happening right now, right? And seeing Kamala's rise over the past 24 hours, it's absurd. And I think people should be asking questions about that.
Dollars to make sure that to use the courts, to use the denial of Secret Service protection, to use all of these other mechanisms of power to make sure that President Biden doesn't have anybody to run against, and now Vice President Kamala Harris won't have to really deal with an authentic democracy.
Wow.
What do you think happens here? We've got 4 months until
The radical left is
Oh my
scared to death of
gosh.
President Trump returning to the White House, and they'll do everything in their
the election. Do you
Watch.
think it's
This is why I brought this up. All right. It's because of what he says right here.
almost certain that Kamala Harris will be the nominee? Or could you see it genuinely ending up being an open broker convention where it could be one of any number of people?
Yeah, I think it's better for the party and the country if they actually have an open convention. But
Also, does anyone here actually pay for like YouTube Red or like YouTube Premium, whatever it is, to where so like they don't have to see ads? I feel like I'm the only one here. It's wild.
having seen what I've seen
I
from
just
the
don't know if it's worth
Democratic
it.
Party, I don't think that that is a likely outcome. But I think it would be better for our country. So, you know, I don't know. I think, you know, I saw what happened during the primaries where the people who were running, like Dean Phillips and myself and Marianne Williamson, were just shut out. We were told those primaries are not.
You know what's funny? I actually had YouTube Music whenever I had YouTube Music whenever it was also YouTube Red. They weren't part it wasn't an umbrella, right? So, like, it was either one or the other. Like, I only had YouTube Music, but I still got ads on all my videos. It was super weird. So then I stopped paying for it because it didn't seem, that valuable to me at that time. But yeah, maybe I'll reconsider it again. But somewhere along this video, like I feel like I kind of pigeonholed myself into watching this whole thing. But somewhere in this video, he says that 100 days is like so long, conveying that literally anything can happen in this election, and it's still so early. So that's kind of my perspective here. And get an ad blocker, probably not for me personally, because I don't know. As someone who makes videos, I feel like I just have way too much respect for creators to not watch the ads, right? Like it's a disruptive, but it's also I feel like it's part of the process of supporting some of the people that you consume content from, right? So that's how the ad market works. So that's what I'm thinking. Okay, now back to some of these questions over here. Let me see. Perfect. Alrighty. So Tiger said, when did you first learn about RFK Jr. and what made you decide to support him over other candidates? You know what? Personally, I've always loved the underdog, right? I love the underdog. I've always supported the underdog. And to see how the media has been constantly manipulating the story surrounding RFK Jr. just bothers me so much, right? And again, I'm just a guy who doesn't have a lot of followers, right? I make videos, sometimes they get views, sometimes they don't. All I know is I like talking about these things, and I know I don't have as much influence as so many other people on the internet. I understand that, right? But when it comes to RFK Jr., I just felt like there was some sort of responsibility here, right? Because seeing him not get the type of national attention that you see being had on so many other like ridiculous things in this country, it just feels unfair. It feels so silly. And guys, I'm on TikTok, right? And I'm scrolling through these comments and it seems absolutely absurd how many people are for RFK, how many people support his movement, how many people like what he has to say, how many people like his policies. There is just an astounding amount of just national opinion that supports the idea that people genuinely like RFK, right? There has to be millions of comments now of genuine support for him. So the idea that he's not allowed on CNN or not allowed on ABC or not allowed on MSNBC is just really odd to me. So I don't know. To me, being able to make these videos, being able to have more of these conversations in this type of format, it's just great. It's great, right? And so many people just love having these conversations here. And, I remember one time I heard if you have the ability to do something, you have the responsibility to do something, right? And I feel that really deeply here. So that's kind of my perspective. Someone else here says, "Are you still voting for RFK Jr., knowing that Kamala Harris is polling higher than Trump?" I've seen some of these polls already of Kamala vote polling higher than Trump. I'm like genuinely confused here, right? Because all this is happening like super fast. And usually, whenever polls are collected, it's done over the span of days. And like, when did you have the time? Like, when were you polling for Kamala? Like, and we saw polls with Kamala's name on the ticket, but that was before Joe Biden like dropped out of the race, which obviously changed things, right? So I think in order to address that question, we need to see what happens in like the next 1 or 2 weeks, right? And also another problem with that, with the way these questions are asked and the way these polls are framed for social media, like it's usually between like, oh, Kamala Harris polling higher than Trump, but only between like 18 to 28, which is arguably the least, like the demographic that votes the least, right? The age graph that votes the least. People that age typically don't vote, right? So it's hard to get these people to actually move from virality to the ballots, right? So at the end of the day, we don't know, right? Maybe what's going to happen with Kamala is that you're going to see just a huge online virality that's so grand that it will move polls, right? That's totally possible. I'm not saying it's not, but it's I am still gonna vote for RFK Jr. Right? I've said this for a couple of videos now, but it's, if Kennedy is in, so am I. Right? If he's in, I'm in. So that's my position. All right. Will RFK make the ABC debate? I don't know. It'd be great. I'd love to see him there. Right? I really would. But I don't think ABC is giving him any time of day, right? As RFK said during his press conference, he said that a lot of these medias are colluding with each other to keep him off of the national spotlight. Terrible, but we don't know. He was supposed to be at the CNN debate. We saw what happened. Terrible. All right, let's see what else. Alrighty, I'm scrolling through questions right now. Chillin says, I have respect for creators, but not the monetization policy. I don't skip sponsored ads, but definitely algorithmic ads. That's interesting. What do you think of Jill Stein? I don't really think about Jill Stein often. I don't really think about Oliver or Cornel West often. For whatever reason, I was never really attracted to them, right? And according to polls, they were a big long shot. I know you could say like, oh, RFK is a long shot too, but I think everyone knows that RFK's campaign is significantly different, right? Even among these other people, even like on a poll that I saw with thousands of Democrats and Republicans and independents, like Jill Stein was still polling in like 0.4%, while RFK was sitting somewhere between like 9 and 10, right? So also, I believe Oliver is like no longer the Libertarian nominee, so I don't know. I don't think about them a lot, really. All right, let's see. RFK Jr.'s anti-swamp, so that pretty easily explains why he was excluded from MSN. You're right. You are right. Someone else says, I'm just scrolling through the comments, by the way. Someone else says, I love your channel. I'm just 16, and honestly, I'm glad I'm aware of everything going on. It got me interested in politics too, so I can do my part in a more better future, not just for myself, but for everyone. That's so sweet. That's so huge. Right, I love that so much. I actually, this is gonna be super lame, but check this out. Whenever I was 16, I started a club in high school because I didn't really have a lot of friends in school. I mostly had friends outside of school, but in like the context of school, I was always kind of searching for people. And what's hilarious is I started this like magic club, right? Because I love playing with cards. I love doing some sort of magic trick and things like that. So I started a club and it was called a House of Cards. Right. And it was such a fun time. But we only had like 2 or so meetings dedicated to House of Cards because what ended up happening was in those meetings, we just kept talking about politics. Right? We just suddenly became so indulged in this world of politics, right? Because at this point, it was around, like 2015, 2016, and we were hearing a lot about Trump and Hillary, right? So we were just having these conversations in one of the classrooms with this teacher who was our like supervisor or whatever, and he was just great. Right? So the club ended up being instead of being House of Cards, it ended up being House of Discussion just because of how often we didn't do any magic and we just talked about current events. So that's great. All right, let's see. Once RFK Jr. gets on all state ballots, then their argument for him to not be there goes out the window. Yeah, you are absolutely right. Kamala's working it. She was on Cyrus Radio. Oh my gosh, yeah, Kamala's everywhere right now. It's wild. Like I feel like Kamala has completely disregarded all of her duties as vice president, and running the now she's just running the campaign trail full time. Kind of crazy, but that's crazy. Yeah, where's Joe Biden hiding? We saw him for the first time today, and I mean, I thought he looked as well as anyone could expect some man in their 80s to look after having COVID. That's what I think. I'm on Twitter and I'm seeing people say body double, right? Body double. I'm like, I don't know if I want to feed too much into that conspiracy, but sure. We need the Avengers to endorse RFK Jr. That's the only way he'll win. Are you talking about that video? Oh my gosh, that video was so good. Let me see if I can bring it up because I think it's hilarious. It was so funny. What's it called? Like Avengers endorsing Biden. Yeah, I can bring it up. All right, so someone else said, "Do you think there is a legitimate chance RFK could pick up momentum and compete come November? I feel like there is not enough time and not enough people who are willing to vote outside of parties." You know what, your mom? I think that's a great question, and I think a lot of people have a right to feel that way, right? Because you're someone like this time comes every 4 years, right? It's election season, right? It's kind of like sports, you want to pick the right team because you just want your person to win. And here's what I'll have to say about it. All right. There is this incredible video that Kennedy's team posted, and I think it perfectly shows how exactly he can win, right? And I honestly think everyone should be watching this. Anyone who thinks that their vote is possibly not gonna make a difference, or anyone who thinks that they're gonna be wasting their vote, I want you to watch this. Let's see. Oh man, what do I do? I'm dealing with like so many layouts here. I am so sorry. All right, here it is. Check this out. This was from the Kennedy team.
All right, so the numbers are finally in, and they are, in a word, game changing. Whoa. Okay, so that's 2 words, but this is a big deal. In light of the most normal political week of all time, Team Kennedy would like to pile it on today with some incredibly staggering polling data. Now, the quick preface here is that we wanted to test where people stood after they heard Bobby's message from himself, as opposed to the media's version. The poll was meant to be private, but the results were so interesting we have to share.
So I feel like there's something here that we're missing. I don't think this is all the data, unfortunately. I don't know why they're kind of withholding it, but in this video they talk about how RFK is up like 14%, and it looks like we're not seeing that here. right? Because it was between a two-way race, and all these are three-way numbers. So I don't have the best understanding of this poll or the best idea, but we'll talk about that later.
So interesting, we have to share. Let's get into it. Zogby Strategies just released a poll with over 1,300 respondents and a margin of error of just 2.8%. So very solid data. In a head-to-head matchup between President Trump and President Biden, it's essentially 50-50. So no surprise there. In a head-to-head matchup between Vice President Harris and President Trump, it's again pretty close to 50-50, with Harris doing a few points worse than Biden. So again, no surprise there. But in the head-to-head matchup between President Donald J. Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Kennedy wins by a whopping 14 points, 57-43. This would be a landslide victory for our first independent president since George Washington. Kennedy wins by a whopping 14.
Yeah, I'm replaying this real quick. See, so he describes a head-to-head matchup.
In the head-to-head matchup between
But we didn't see that data in the first frame.
President Donald J. Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Kennedy wins by a whopping 14 points, 57-43. This would be a landslide victory for our first independent president since George Washington. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Green Party, we all would unite under a Kennedy administration. Let's compare this to another Zogby poll from April. It had Kennedy barely ahead of Trump, but still winning. So these numbers suggest that since that horrendous debate, Kennedy is surging. So why isn't the media covering this? Why are they still saying that this is a race between two people? To answer that properly, we have to go.
Also, real quick, I want to answer this person's question. Someone said, who is at the forefront of independent media that helps RFK's campaign and that we should follow to make it bigger? There's so many people on Twitter that I feel like are pretty unbiased. But already, I think a good rule of thumb is to go on Kennedy's Twitter and maybe look at who he's following. Right. I would just scroll a little bit. And also on his Twitter or on his X page, you'll see the Kennedy 24 logo. And I've just been following a lot of people who have that same like sticker or that little organization badge. Right. And I like it. Sometimes I get things earlier than the news, right? Because of that, because some people on their team will be sharing things that maybe they shouldn't have shared, but it's nice.
To go all the way back to 1992.
Can you explain what internet is?
It's called the Backstreet Boys. I still believe in a place called home.
It was Democrat Bill Clinton, Republican George Bush, and independent Ross Perot. And we all know what happened.
That's it. Game, set, match. It's over.
Bill Clinton won 43% of the popular vote, while Bush won 37.5%, and Perot garnered 18.9%. But here's...
All right. Now, this goes back to the person who said, let's see. I'm going to start a club too. Probably about the Kennedys because I love them. You totally should. That'd be awesome. So this goes back to your mom. That's not me making a joke. That's their person's user. But your mom said, do you think there's a legitimate chance that RFK could pick up momentum and compete come November? Sorry, I can't. I have trouble reading sometimes. So if I ever misspeak, now you know. All right. A lot of people give me a lot of trash about it. It's okay. No one's perfect. Neither am I. But yeah, I feel like there is not enough time and not enough people who are willing to vote outside of parties. So this is what I want you to really pay attention to. Okay.
Here's something that very few people know. An exit polling firm called Voter Research and Surveys conducted exit polls in 1992. And this is crazy. They revealed that upwards of 40% of the electorate would have voted for Ross Perot if they believed he had a chance to win. If people had voted their conscience in the 1992 election, Clinton's numbers would have gone from 43 to 31, Bush from 38 to 27, and Ross Perot would have been the president. So pre-election polling dramatically underestimated the appeal of Perot's candidacy. But the media in 1992 continued to push this spoiler/wasted vote narrative.
How sad is it that the media has such astronomical influence over people that people are no longer voting the candidate that they actually believe in, right? Because now the media, and even then, as we could see, the media acts as someone's excuse to let them do the thinking for them. It's like, I don't know, I don't want to think, so I'm just going to listen to the media, and I'm just going to allow the media to think for me, and whatever the media says, that's just what I'm going to subscribe to. Like, no, I was just having a conversation, with someone I care deeply about, and they were like, where do you get your news from? And you know what I said? I said, every time I want to consume some sort of news, I never get it from just one place, because everyone has bias. Not only does everyone have bias, but every organization has bias, right? Even those who seem to be unbiased have bias, right? And I was like, in order to consume things the most effectively, the most holistically, you need to be consuming like 3 articles covering the same exact topic, right? Because that's coming from different perspectives, right? Every time you read something from CNN, read it from Fox too, right? Read it from ABC as well, right? You need to consume it from so many different places, because every organization has its own biases. Every person who puts their name on that article comes from a background, comes from a perspective, comes from a worldview that you may not necessarily agree with, right? Or the problem is, we have these biases that make us search for those other biases so they could reaffirm what we already believe. But the problem is, whenever we only reaffirm what we already believe, we don't necessarily make the most intelligent decision. And that's tragic. So I think, I don't know, a lot of what I talk about here, I always think that I never want to tell someone what to think more than I want to tell someone how to think. I don't want to tell you what to think. I don't want to tell you, even who to vote for. I want to tell you how you should be thinking about who you want to vote for.
Narrative.
Third-party outsider.
The near impossible.
It's out of his grasp.
But at this point, most agree Perot needs a miracle.
We will landslide this thing if the people vote their conscience.
Vote their conscience. There you go.
Voters, the media, and analysts actually understood Perot had a real shot to win the election, the entire narrative and therefore the dynamics of the election would have been completely different.
Wow.
So something about this story seems vaguely familiar. If Bobby's even talked about in the media, he's talked about in the exact same way.
A spoiler candidate, a spoiler.
Fringe presidential aspirants.
All right, so to sum up, based on the lessons of history and the data that we just received, if people vote their conscience on November 5th, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would be the next president of the United States. But what these lessons teach us also is that we have to believe he can win. We are steeped in a media-induced Stockholm.
Wow. The only thing I didn't like about that video was this guy saying that we just got to believe. If only we believe. While it's true, it just seems a little cheesy. For me, it's true. It's true. Just a bit cheesy. Right? Anyways, that's the video that I wanted to show. I do think it's incredibly important, and especially for the people who don't believe that he has a chance in November. All right, you're watching this video in July. If you're watching me right now, you're watching this in July. Okay, we got a couple months to go, right? Where anything can happen, and if you don't believe me, look at the past 8 days. Over the past 8 days, we're living in a completely different political dialogue. This is a completely different national conversation. Really, we don't know who Kamala Harris is going to pick for her VP. We don't know what's going to happen with President Biden. There's a lot of speculation that President Biden isn't well, and if he's not unwell, or if he's not so unwell, then he's going to potentially be removed from office, and then we'll see Kamala Harris already be acting president, right? And then so many people, so much can happen. Right, so much could happen. Why is Gamora? I love that. That's hilarious. All right, start your club. That'd be awesome. All right, going through the comments again, probably trying to catch up. Yeah, this is a great idea so far. I'm like 10 minutes behind comments. I'm so sorry. But now that he has Secret Service costs removed, he needs to ramp up like never before. I completely agree. I think he needs to go everywhere. All right. Whatever states he hasn't hit, he needs to be there. Right? Not just his team, but genuinely him. Oh no. Oh no, my TV. Sorry. I have something playing in the background, right? But because I don't pay for YouTube Premium, I get ads every once in a while. So that is hilarious. All right. Let's see. RFK Jr.'s on his Batman arc. I love it. What are RFK Jr.'s current poll numbers? Last I saw RFK's at a swift, like I believe somewhere between 15 to 18 right nationally. All right. Any sources on Biden being more sick or did he really get COVID? According to his physician from the White House, he did get COVID. And he is now, I believe today they said he tested negative, right? The physician, like the White House physician said that, and he's able to complete the duties of his presidential duties, right? So, yeah. I think he's fine now, but you never know. Has anyone here watched Breaking Points today? I have not. As long as people say independents don't have a chance, you'll always be stuck with the duopoly. I completely agree. Please hit like, build the algorithm. That's great. I thought the simulation glitched for a second. Was that because I brought it back? All right. I'm just going to be skipping things up real quick. Sorry. You know what I actually want to watch too? Oh, you think Bob will make it to the ABC debate stage? I do think we'll be seeing him there. I really do. So I'm excited about that. And honestly, if we do see him, I believe Trump already agreed to debate Kamala Harris. I think seeing those three people on there on the debate stage is going to be absolutely wild. Alrighty, still scrolling. Oh, hey, what's your take on RFK Jr. supposedly offering a dropout in exchange for a cabinet position? If true, it's disappointing. I don't think he is. And I don't think that's true. But you know what? A lot could happen behind closed doors. So I guess I don't want to rule anything out. But according to his press conference, I believe him when he says that he's happy running the way that he's running. He's happy running as an independent and he's in it to win it. So I don't know. I believe that. But I did make a video on this, right? And looks like some other campaign advisors discussed RFK potentially leaving and joining Trump. And apparently this has been a conversation that's been had for the past couple months, right? So much so that these campaign advisors are no longer with him or with RFK. But you know, I don't know if I see Kennedy as part of the cabinet, right? I don't know if that's something that would interest him. But I think RFK at the end of the day loves his country more than he loves the idea of him winning. So if, if Trump does end up being the person who wins, or if RFK ends up just leaving his campaign, like we don't know. We don't know. So I guess I shouldn't be making too much predictions about the future. Alrighty. What states do you think RFK will win in the elections? That's a good question. I don't know. Yeah. I should make a video about that. Discussing some sort of predictions. I think that'd be so funny. In a recent Dr. Phil interview, he was asked if he wanted to join Trump admin. Okay, and RFK Jr. said no. Oh, well, that was before the assassination attempt, right? Yeah. So I do think that changed things, right? Because I believe they were looking at like the last president that survived an assassination attempt. He ended up winning like in a landslide, right? So who knows what's gonna happen? I do think it's fast how quickly we moved on from that because that was such a historic event and it only happened last week and suddenly we're just not talking about that anymore. You know, kind of uncomfortable, right? Because the spotlight is now on Kamala Harris. I think that's weird. Laura says, "What is it that made you such a fervent Kennedy supporter? Family, friends, maybe you can make a video about it." That's interesting. That's interesting. It wasn't friends or family, I'll tell you that, because no one I don't think anyone agreed with me for a really long time, right? No one agreed with me for a really, really long time. But you know what? I think the tide is already turning, right? Just because the more I talk about him, the more people are starting to actually hear him in a way that's not manipulated by the media. And I think that's just the biggest thing, right? Like I was showing my parents his press conference, right? And my parents when my dad, who's not a big fan of him, you know what he said? My dad said, "Oh man, this guy's super smart. Super smart." That's crazy. That is crazy. So, and I honestly think most people would feel that way if most people actually gave him a fair shot, right? And I believe on my video on Sunday before his press conference, I wrote that if this election is fair and if people give him a fair shot, then we will see Kennedy in the White House. And I still believe that. I do. Yeah, you're the guy turning people into RFK supporters. You know, that's sweet. I don't know if I see it that way. I don't know if I see it that way. Because honestly, over the past like year, because I talk about this stuff all the time, and it hasn't nothing's really changed over the past year. But you know, except now I'm making making longer videos these days. But I've talked about Trump. I've talked about Biden. Right? I've talked a lot about these guys, right? And also, whenever RFK Jr. announced his candidacy, like I also talked about him, right? I just loved talking about these people who I believe could make a genuine difference in the American people's lives, right? And I think this is important. If you're an American, this matters, right? You could be like, oh, I don't like talking about politics, things like that. But I mean, whether or not you like talking about it, that's irrelevant because it affects you either way. So you could either be ignorant and believe that none of this matters, or you could be aware and accept that, you know what, what's happening around me, the people that we elect, these positions that are appointed, all of these things actually do have an effect on me. And you know what? We saw this over the past couple couple years, and it's really interesting. All right. So why don't Trump supporters see how good RFK Jr. is? You know, I think in order to answer that question, I think we just need to look into just genuine biases that people have. It's almost like a bone. Like whenever people find someone that they like, you know, if they've been chanting Biden for the last 4 years, or you know what, even collectively a collective 12 years, right? Because you know he was vice president to Obama, right? Like it's almost like a bone that is so difficult to break. Because you know what, like I'm voting for Biden because I know Biden and he's familiar, and you know what, like this country's been okay, so I'm just going to continue voting for Biden, and that's it, right? That's it. But the problem then becomes when you need to break the bone because it's unhealthy, right? Like I bring this up to someone, you know, obviously very, very important to me. But I always talk about how if you if you have something toxic in your life, it's almost like a broken bone, right? It's almost like a broken bone that you will never let the doctor take care of. So it'll just continue to be broken. And because it's broken, you'll never live in the capacity that you were created to live in. But the reason why a lot of people remain broken is because it's easier than going to a doctor, addressing the pain, and letting the doctor actually hold it, put it back in place, put a cast on it, and you're gonna wear it for the next couple months. That's hard. It's hard to address your pain. It's hard to address trauma. It's hard to admit that you're wrong, right? So whenever we have these conversations about Trump supporters, Biden supporters, right, or just anyone who's for a candidate, it takes a lot for them to admit that they're wrong. Right? Something that I actually like is, you know what? If you ever know me, actually, you don't even need to know me personally, but you'll know that I say I'm wrong a lot and that I'm very, very dumb and that I'm not okay. Right? Like I've just, you know what? My brain is just not sharp like other people's, right? So I'm wrong a lot. Truly. Right? And I will admit my mistakes, I will admit my biases, and I will admit the areas of my life or my perception and where it's skewed, right? I will admit that, right? I remember being what's an area where I was wrong in? You know what? I guess I could bring up COVID. Maybe, maybe I could bring up COVID because but even now I still justify the fear because at the end of the day we didn't know, but you know what? A lot of people are bringing it up anyways. They're like, "Yeah, we shouldn't have shut down the country. We shouldn't have done this. We shouldn't have worn masks." And you know what? All those things could potentially be true, but at the end of the day, as an American citizen who was just at home, who had the gift of being able to work from their home, right? Because their job allowed it. That's such a gift. But as someone who experienced that reality and they would look at the news and they would look at the numbers and they would look at the death count, that fear was that fear was so real. You know, and I know looking back, you could say, okay, well, yeah, there was just fear mongering. This happened. It wasn't real. And the people who were, against it, the people who weren't wearing masks, right? I believe there was some judgment on them. Not necessarily from me because I was in a somewhat conservative area, but my fear was still there. My fear was still present. And maybe that's not the best idea, but that is real. That was what my experience was. All right. Someone else says, "What does RFK Jr. feel about Kamala Harris?" I was shocked when one friend that I walk with and have known for over 12 years, when I mentioned Kennedy, shut up, dumped me. Another thinks he endorses Trump. I feel like that's a really hard sentence to read. I actually don't think I messed that up. I feel like it was written in not the best way, but I will bring up what RFK Jr. says on Kamala. Let's see. Let me see if I could share this. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. All right, perfect. Let's see. Another ad. You know what? I'm not even the only person paying for this ad because everyone else who's watching this has to pay for it too. But RFK talks about Kamala a lot here. So let me see if I could bring up the transcription. Let's see. Oh my gosh. I thought I was going to search this. Let's see. You know what? I guess this is the beauty of going live, right? Because you genuinely, you just don't know what's going to happen, right? You don't know the questions that are going to roll in. So you got to do it. You got to do it on the fly. But let's see.
about the chronic disease epidemic, about
I think it's
she's a
mine.
product of the
Here it is.
corporate control of our democracy.
We are awesome.
And I've never heard of her a war hawk on is the Peace Party.
How do you compare yourself?
Okay, here it is.
Obviously, President Biden party appeared poised.
I'm trying to play the whole question.
You mentioned Kamala Harris is who you said that the Democratic Party appeared poised to put into that position. You were critical there, obviously, of President Biden's policy. What, if anything, is different? How do you compare yourself to Kamala Harris if she does become the Democratic nominee for president?
Well, I think Kamala Harris is the party of war. She is she's a war hawk. On the Democratic Party was always the Peace Party. Kamala Harris is a war hawk on Ukraine. She's a war hawk on China. I think that we should be figuring out ways to coexist with the rest of the world as best we can. Of course, we need to protect our national security. I think she's not going to do anything about the national deficit. I've never heard her speak about the chronic disease epidemic, I think she's a product of the corporate control of our democracy. And she's one of the authors of, in terms of civil rights, she has one of the worst civil rights record of any public official. She's the author of one of the primary authors of the school to prison pipeline. She kept 5,000 people, despite a Supreme Court order that she released 5,000 prisoners of nonviolent drug crimes who were illegally in California jails. She kept them in there saying that we needed them for firefighting and for other public work.
All right. Pausing this because there's a very important question here. Look at this. Christopher says, I have a very important question. What hair products do you use? Question mark, question mark. That's 2 question marks. That's tough. Right. You know what? I actually did put something in my hair today, and I thought I looked stupid. I genuinely did. I put gel in my hair. It was Harry's Taming Cream, just from Target. Right. Harry's Taming Cream. I like it. I do, but it's hard. Right. It's really, really, really tough. And it was just a little too hard for me. So before I started this, I wet my hair completely, and I kind of try to get it all out. I think you could still probably see some hold. Not sure if I got it all out, but yeah.
Work services. And that's just a modern version of indentured servitude, a modern version of slavery. She was one of the 2 leading public officials in California, which now has the worst education system, 49th in education outcomes in the country. 50% of the homeless people in our country are in California, and she was behind those policies. I don't think she has a good, I don't think, in terms of the traditional democratic principles, I don't think she has a credible record.
In all the turmoil the past week,
Wow. So clearly, RFK Jr. is not the biggest fan of Kamala Harris. All right. Clearly. And you know how I know he's right? Because no one else is talking about him. I mean, no one else is talking about all these things with Kamala, right? I don't know if you guys have seen everything that's happening on Twitter with Kamala, but I will show you this. It has been an entire overhaul trying to just share a lot of discoverability for Kamala. Look at this. Kamala HQ. There's some sort of brat thing going on. And guys, I'm young. I know I'm a young gun. Gen Z, I love it. I have no idea what this brat theme is. I really don't. And it feels like I'm on the opposite side of the early adopters, and I have no idea what it is. All right. So yeah, but they're posting every hour here, and they're sharing a bunch of memes. Look at this.
Well, what we really need is a feminine nominee. A what? A feminine nominee. Well, what we really need is a feminine.
Yeah, I think they're gonna get a lot of the Gen Z vote because a lot of young people are eating this up. But like I said earlier, I don't know if those are the people who are going to be turning out to vote. But if they're doing it right now. So, and the amount of times that they are sharing videos is crazy. And to no one's surprise, it looks like they're taking on an anti-Trump type of campaign, right? In the same way that Biden was no different, right? A lot of Biden's campaign was anti-Trump. Like I don't know if I shared this, but the day before Biden dropped out, was I getting like ads every like 3 minutes or so on HBO Max whenever I was watching a movie, and it was on Stop Project 25, and it was paid for by President Biden, right? And again, you're trying to scare people into voting, right? And I'll share this metaphor. It's not it might not be the best metaphor, but I don't I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but it's obviously been very clear if you watched uh, an okay amount of my videos. But I believe in Jesus, right? Like that's probably some of my bias, right? I believe in the truth of the Bible, and and that's part of why I love people, right? Because I know Jesus loves people. So that's part of my bias. And in the Christian community, so many people will try to play this, like they'll try to scare you into Christianity because they'll be like, "Okay, well, hey, you're gonna after you die, do you wanna go to hell?" Like, they'll say it like that. That's the question that they'll frame. Like, "Do you wanna go to hell? If you keep sinning, you're gonna go to hell. Or do you wanna ask Jesus for forgiveness? Do you wanna surrender your life to him so you go to heaven?" Right? And whenever you do that, I don't know how much substance is behind that question. I don't know if people experience life change truly whenever you scare someone into doing the thing that you want them to do, right? So I don't think that's the I don't think that's the best way to go about this campaign. I don't know if that's the best way to go about life. I don't think you should be scaring people into doing what you want them to do more than you should be trying to explain and articulate your perspective and why you think they could benefit from this understanding. So that's what I believe. Ooh, Danny says, my mom, a diehard Trump supporter, but recently she's been more open to RFK, right? And I think that's how it is, right? I think a lot of people are just they're somewhere on the spectrum, right? And I think the fact is, whenever you have like what is it now, like 55% of people identify as an independent, but that doesn't mean 55% of people vote independent, but you've already self-identified yourself as an independent, but you've never been able to find a candidate that could fulfill your moderate views. So because you've never found a candidate that could fulfill your moderate views, you've been forced to vote for Democrats. You've been forced to vote for Republicans, right? So then you have this idea that, oh, you know what? I've been voting Republicans. I've been voting conservative. Maybe I'm conservative. Like, no, you're still a moderate independent, but you haven't discovered the other options. And I think that's part of the reason why we do what we do here, because it's to create more discoverability for moderates, right? Like to me, that just makes sense. Why isn't the media talking about this? Why isn't the media talking about moderates like RFK Jr.? Like I feel like that makes so much sense. If the vast majority of people are independent, then why aren't the vast majority of people behind RFK? And I think the simple answer is because they haven't discovered him. If you want to go on a deeper answer, it's because they have designed it so they have designed it so you can't discover them. There's a reason why RFK blows up on X. There's a reason why he blows up on TikTok, right? Because because the media doesn't control those, right? The media can't get its hands on TikTok. They've tried. The media has tried to get its hands on Twitter, and they failed. All right, let's see. I'm gonna keep going. I converted my evangelical grandparents to vote for RFK. It was pretty cool. You know what? There is a striking amount of people over the age of 65 who are suddenly for RFK Jr. It's crazy. At the very beginning of my channel, a lot of the analytics would suggest that a lot of boomers would love these videos. They would love and watch them and they would just eat them up. It's crazy. To my surprise as well, because RFK himself has said that that's the one demographic that I can't get into. That's crazy. Someone else says, why do you think RFK is the best candidate? You know, I know a lot of these are talking points, but I think we deserve to have someone with moderate values in the White House, right? And I'll explain it like this. Let's see. I'll explain it like this. Let's just follow the data, right? If more than okay, let me actually bring up some numbers real quick. Percentage of independent voters in the US. Alrighty. Okay, I got 43% here. All right, after just a quick Google search, 43%. Now I'm sure I could find, some more accurate information on this. It looks like this one is from 2020. I mean, sorry, 2022, right? But 2022, 43% of US adults identified as independents. All right, that's it. So, if 43% of people identify as independents, and let's say, okay, so 27% are Republicans and 27% are Democrats, that means the vast majority of adults in this country are independent. That means most of them are actually more unified collectively on probably the majority of issues, right? And that's probably the exact opposite of what you hear from the media, right? Because the media has led you to believe that most people are more divided, right? The media has led you to believe that this world is black and white and that you are either pro choice or you are pro life, right? You are either for this or you are against this. And part of the reason why I love RFK Jr. is because he understands that the world isn't black and white. He's not dumb. He knows that he knows that there is some sort of middle ground that maybe it doesn't make everyone happy, but it could probably satisfy a vast majority of people, right? And that vast majority of people, those are the vast majority of Americans, right? And I believe if you were to take that statement and follow it through everything else that RFK Jr. has talked about, right, with his idea for like the economy, right? His idea for solving chronic illness, right? His idea for managing an infrastructure that takes care of AI regulation, right? All of those things are probably extremely moderate. They'll follow that idea because I think RFK Jr. does an adequate job of representing the public. And I just don't know if, let's say, Biden or Trump are representative of the common American person, right? You have on one side a billionaire, right? I mean, I don't know what part of you makes him feel relevant, right? A lot of people feel like after the assassination attempt, they made him seem more human. And I'm like, I feel like I've always understood that he was human, right? I just know that we are vastly different humans, right? I don't have billions in my bank account, right? I don't have billions in assets, right? So I don't know how relatable he is here, right? And you know what? Even like President Biden, like I don't know how relatable it is to be a public servant for the past 50 years, yet having millions in the bank, right? I don't know how relatable this is, right? And I don't know how relatable it is to have a track record that isn't the most favorable. Now, now, there are things that I applaud on both sides. There's things that I applaud from Trump, and there's things that I applaud of Biden, right? But to see RFK kind of in his struggle, to me seems more relatable than Trump or Biden, right? And that said, he's still very, very unrelatable in a lot of ways, right? His uncle was the president of the United States. His dad was almost president, right? He's incredibly wealthy, right? He's married to an actress who's very, very famous and also probably very rich, right? He's not a relatable person either. But by comparison, I don't know. I don't know. All right. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, Kamala Harris is definitely courting young voters. Wow. Someone else said, "You are awesome. Love hearing you speak, Adam. It is unfair that RFK Jr. is not being respected. Unreal. Thank you for your share." Hey, you're awesome. Thank you so much. So cool. Anyways, this has been, I think we've been live for almost like, I think we've passed an hour. I think I'm going to go ahead and start wrapping it up. But this is great. I really enjoyed being here. If anyone has any other last minute question before we kind of wrap things up, but what did you think about this? I kind of want to stream more often. I don't really know what that looks like. Maybe it looks exactly like it was today, right? Where we answer some questions, we hang out a bit, but we also, we also look at some media, right? And we also discuss that a bit further too. I know it's a bit on the fly. I don't know how often I like that, just because I like the videos to be a bit more polished. But maybe this is gonna be good, right? Who knows? But let's see. Oh, you just got your. I'm sorry. Definitely subscribing. Hey, thank you. So cool. Will Adam C. Moreno ever run for office? What a question. I love that question. Man, you know what? I would absolutely love to serve in any way that I possibly can, right? I loved my time being, whenever I, had a government job, right? And I was able to just genuinely make a difference in the public space, right? I absolutely loved it. I worked for schools for many, many years, and I absolutely love it. I cannot stress that enough. I love working in a way that genuinely makes a difference to people, especially seeing especially it being so instant. Like, I'll just share an example. Um, Whenever I was a computer tech for many years at a school district, I loved it. I was a computer resource technician, and when someone were to bring me a computer, oh man, I'm about to get emotional talking about this. But when someone would bring me a computer, this is a child, right? A child who has a broken computer, who needs his computer in order to submit assignments. And this is during COVID, right? Where if your computer isn't working, you can't do anything. You can't submit your assignments, you can't learn, you can't read your book, you can't do anything. So when a student would bring me his computer, they would have their parents to drive home to the school, and their parent has just got off work. Right. So they're tired and their kid hasn't been able to do anything all day, and they bring me their computer and they're like, "What's wrong?" Like, "Oh, the webcam isn't working. I can't get it connected to internet. Can't do anything." And I would just have it for like 5 or so minutes. And to see the look on not only their face, but also their parents' face afterwards, and to have that exchange happen so instantly is so astronomically beautiful. I don't think there is anything that you could compare that to, because you're providing a service for someone and it is instant. Computer's broken, you come to me, I fix computer, I give it back to you, and now you have all the tools that you need in order to do the work that's expected of you, in order to learn, in order to be in class, in order to do your homework, in order to be a kid in school during a pandemic, during a time where no one knew what was going to happen. I loved that experience. I loved that experience. So, oh man, yeah, it feels so good to just help people. And I think at the end of the day, that's what I believe politics is about. It's about helping people. It's about being a service to them. It's about being an adequate representation of the general public's pain points. Like, what is frustrating them? What is an experience that they're having that they probably shouldn't be having? And what is something that someone who is in office or someone who is a public servant can do? What can they do about it? Like, that is the best thing ever. And I know it's so nasty because you see a lot of career politicians be so ah man, I'm a really emotional person, so I'm gonna really try to cut it out. But it's disgusting whenever you see people in office take advantage of the space and they rob the American people of adequate representation and they profit off of them. That's disgusting. You have people like Nancy Pelosi, making what, $10 million off a trade instead of doing an adequate job of representing the people who've elected her. Come on. Like, what is that? That's not okay. People, we should definitely have some sort of policy, some sort of laws that prevent people from taking advantage of the space that they're in. Right? So I just really hope that in the future, people are more cautious about who they vote for, who they elect. And I hope we could bring honor back to public servants. Right? That's what I hope. That's what I hope. I hope people could bring honor back to that space because these offices, they're historic, they're beautiful. The founders of this country decided that there should be people who represent the bodies of population. And now, more so than ever, does it feel like we've lost that and that these people are more self-serving than ever before. So, yeah, absolutely. X Studios. I am voting for RFK. He will be on my ballot for sure. Yeah, start at the DMV. DMVs are no joke. But this was great. This is great. You're helping, informing us, and creating good discussion. I appreciate you. If you're looking to run for office, keep doing what you're doing. You're building a presence. When you're able to run for Congress, the Senate, sky's the limit. I completely agree. I completely agree. I remember one day my dad was just like, I was watching the news. Sorry, my AirPods always fall off. I don't know what it is about them. So if you ever see them in a video or you see me doing this a lot, I'm sorry it's annoying. I'm trying to one day I wanna get some headphones to take care of it. But for now I have AirPods. But I remember one time my dad was like, I was looking at the news and I swear I was just thinking like I was looking at a politician. I was just like, I think I could see you do that one day because you're so gifted in this. And I I love it. It made me emotional. Made me emotional. Keep that enthusiasm with this channel. Yeah, I love this. I love this place. Drivers, check the drivers. I'm assuming you're talking about whatever I was discussing me being computer tech. They were Chromebooks, so yeah, we would we would check the drivers with the webcams. But usually Chromebooks are they were so easy to work on because a lot of times there was like just a hard reboot system that was just very awesome. But even then, it'd be very difficult. But besides your podcast, what else should I support? Any recommendations? I know RFK Jr. has a podcast. I've yet to listen to it, but I know he has one. And I just love consuming different media from different people, right? Like I like consuming David Pakman. I think he's good. I think he's really smart. I don't always agree with him, but again, nonetheless, like you don't need to agree with someone for you to hear them, understand their perspective. Like, how is that wrong? Because it doesn't change the fact that people are intelligent and they definitely have this worldview that probably a significant portion of the population shares. right? So I would just recommend consuming a lot of different content from a lot of different people. Like I listen to podcasts with a lot of pastors who discuss leadership, pastors who discuss other cultural and societal events, and I think that's great, right? Sometimes I listen to Joe Rogan, right? Um, I was listening to the Dr. Phil interview with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., right? Like, there's so many different places for you to consume. I just think I like consuming podcasts, so I'm listening to podcasts like every day, and I really like it. And I just think being able to open yourself up to the experience of listening to other people, hearing their perspective, hearing their worldview, understanding why they think the way that they think, and let it inform you into becoming a more empathetic person. I think that's great. All right. People are intelligent. So many people are intelligent. It's crazy. All right. Well, thank you so much. I loved this space. It was incredible. There's a lot of enthusiasm here. I thought it was great. Um, it's great that your dad is supportive. Yeah, I love my dad. He's incredible. Oh, people need to realize what's at stake. You know what? I have this design, and you know what? Since there's 50 people here almost, I'd love to get everyone's perspective here. And how about this? Someone who let's do it like this. Someone who follows me on my Instagram, I'll send out one of these stickers to you. Right, but I made this design a while ago. It's called On the Line, and I don't know if you could see that, but there's a mug on it with the capital. And I loved this design. I really do. The idea is that this is on the line, right? Our country is on the line. Our future is on the line. What we discuss is constantly being fought for and in battle. And it's also supposed to be representative of online, right? So if anyone wants this sticker, go ahead, follow me on Instagram, and to someone who follows me, I'll go ahead and send this out to you. I'll probably send out to a couple of you guys if anyone cares. But it is on the line. Um, it's a sticker that says on the line. But yeah, follow me at my Instagram, Adam C Moreno. It's just on there if you're interested in it. Also, should I start calling my shows On the Line? Because that was my idea, but now I just kind of make these videos and post them under my name, right? And I wouldn't change my name or anything, but I do kind of like the idea of creating a show around this. I don't know. Like what do you think about that? Yeah. AirPods are horribly designed. I agree with you. Yeah, if anyone wants one of these, follow me on Instagram and I'll send it to someone who's a new follower. All right. Okay. I think I'm going to end this now, but this was incredible. Thank you so much for being here. If you're watching this on the stream, like, I love you. If you're watching this after the stream, I still love you. You're awesome. You're great. You're awesome. On the Line sounds cool. Like the high wire. It's great. Okay. Hope everyone has a great night. You are incredible. I love it. All right. Have a great night. I'll see you guys tomorrow for sure.